Councillor Barbara Blake. I'm the chair of this committee. I'll let the committee introduce themselves, please.
Specialised Vice Chair.
Sean O'Donovan, councillor for Tottenham Hill.
Amina Ibrahim, councillor for Knoll Park.
Alex Worrell, councillor for Stroud Green.
Cathy Brennan, councillor for Muswell Hill.
Councillor John Bevan, Northumberland Park.
Thank you. If the officers present can introduce themselves, please.
Freddie Sprott, Principal Committee Coordinator.
Bob Walker, an external solicitor, sitting as the committee's legal advisor this evening.
Rob Szosowski, Assistant Director for Planning, Building Standards and Sustainability.
Kevin Tohill, Interim Head of Development Management and Planning Enforcement.
Sarah Madondo, Principal Planning Officer.
John McRory, Major Applications Team Leader.
Gareth Prosser, Planning Officer.
Richard Truscott, Design Officer.
Okay, thank you. And other officers will introduce themselves when relevant. So now on to item 1, which is filming at meetings. This meeting is being recorded. All registered speakers should be aware that they will be recorded for live or subsequent broadcast via the council's internet site or by anyone attending the meeting. Item 2 is the planning protocol. Members and speakers are requested to note the information set out at item 2 on the agenda. Item 3, apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Bartlett and Councillor Buxton. Item 4 is urgent business, and we have no items of urgent business. Item 5, declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest, please? No. Okay, thank you. So we're on to item 6, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of October. Can we approve those, please? Councillor Brennan.
I have a marginal comment, which is that I'd quite like to check the wording at the meeting because I don't remember the exactly saying TfL could not guarantee that funding would be available next year for this scheme. But I'm just querying, I don't remember hearing those words in the meeting. But is there any way to confirm that?
What page? Well, I remember them saying it. Yeah, that's my recollection. Thank you. Okay. All right. Right. So we are. I'm going to change the order on the agenda. So I want to move item 9. Oh, sorry. Could you approve the minutes, please, then, of the 6th of October, 8th of October? Are they approved? Yes, thank you. Okay, so I'm on to item 9, which I'm going to move that up the agenda. So this is 30 to 48 Lawrence Road. It's pages 117 to 248 in the pack, but I'm going to hand over to Rob Szosowski. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I just wanted to bring to committee's attention a matter that's arisen this evening. So as you will have found from reading the pack, due to the height of the proposed building and its use, the application is subject to Fire Safety Gateway 1, which is part of the new legislation about fire safety of buildings. Following the Grenfell Tower tragedy, as that you will be familiar with. So Gateway 1 is a planning gateway, which means the Health and Safety Executive is a statutory consultee on this planning application. So the HSE have been consulted on this application. As you will have read in the pack, they expressed concern on the application, and the applicant proposed some amendments which were also considered and are reflected in your pack. As officers, we had considered that the points had been addressed by the applicant in response to the HSE. However, this evening we've received a further representation from the Health and Safety Executive maintaining concern to do with distances for firefighting, access and things like that. So because we've received that representation this evening, there will clearly need to be a period of engagement between us as officers and the applicant regarding some design changes, and that clearly will require some time and some work. I've also taken advice from our legal advisor. So essentially this further HSE response which we received today, we need time to consider that properly and give you proper advice further to what you've got in the pack. Therefore, the officer recommendation I'm recommending to amend from granting planning permission to a deferment of the decision. So we don't take that recommendation lightly because deferment should only be done in exceptional circumstances, but I consider this is an exceptional circumstances. So apologies, that's not necessarily what people wanted to do today when they arrived, and people have spent time reading through the papers. So just to be clear, the officer recommendation has changed from granting planning permission to a deferment. So so over to you, Chair.
Councillor Worrell?
Just in terms of this meeting, should we sort of scrutinise the proposal still as it is, or would it be wiser to wait until we have a sort of complete final form to do that?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, and good question. And we have considered that as well, whether it is worthwhile to still have the discussion today, but perhaps leave the final decision for another time. I think because the HSE's concerns are new and different to what had been raised before, and sort of elaborate more on that, it does look like there will need to be some design changes to accommodate that, which would mean having to go over the debate again at a later point in time. So although it's frustrating, I don't think it would be best use of committee's time to actually discuss that, given that it looks like there will need to be amendments to address HSE's concerns. So yes, we have considered that as an option, but that's not what I'm recommending tonight. I'm recommending just a straight deferral. So over to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So I propose to defer this item for the reasons set out by the Assistant Director. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Ibrahim. And then
Yeah, I second it.
you second it. Okay. And are we in agreement that we defer this item? Agreed. Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's deferred. Thank you. Councillor Collette, do you have any declarations of interest?
No, none.
Okay, thank you. So we're now on to back to item 8, which is 39 Queen Street, which is pages 7 to 116 in the pack. And I'll hand over to Sarah to give the proposal, please.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, councillors. So the proposal is for 39 Queen Street, and the reference number is HGY 2024-1203. The proposal is redevelopment of site for industrial and warehousing purposes within use class E, B2 and B8, with ancillary office accommodation together with access, service yard, car and cycle parking, landscaping, construction of a new substation, boundary treatments, and other related works, including demolition. So this slide shows the site highlighted in red. Move on to the next slide. This slide is an aerial view of the site. To the immediate east of the site are existing industrial units. To the west is Selby Centre, which is a multi-purpose community centre. Further west of Selby Centre is Weir Hall Road Community Open Space and Sports Field. as well as Marchwood Artwood Learning Centre. There is also a space located to immediate north of site, Bull Lane playing fields and a cricket pitch, which are located within the boundaries of London Borough of Enfield. The Devonshire Hill Nursery and Primary School is located to the southwest of the site, adjacent to Selby Centre. This slide shows the aerial view of the context of the site. Adjacent to the site is Frontier Works. To the northeast of the site is Bull Lane and Commercial Road, are significant further industrial uses which are located within the Borough of Enfield. These are site photographs of the existing site. To the top right is a view of northern boundary with a row of trees to be retained. Second photograph is eastern boundary, and the top left photograph shows the existing car park. The bottom left photograph shows the existing access. The left photograph is western boundary. So on this slide, it shows the aerial view of existing access as it is at the moment. I would point out that the access will be improved, and this will be discussed further on in the presentation. The slide also shows the trees to be retained on the boundary. Policy designation. The site falls within designated employment area, is classified as a local significant industrial site. The proposal. As stated previously, the proposal consists of demolition of existing building currently occupied by Booker Wholesale, and the proposal is for the erection of 3 times 2-story units with flexibility to be used across use class E, B, and B8 with ancillary office accommodation. The proposed building heights ranges from 11.6 meters to 13.5 meters in height, increasing the employment floor area to 7,238 square meters. Also, there's improvements to access arrangements, service yard, landscaping provision, cycle parking, refuse, and provision of a substation. Considerations. So there are principle of the development, design and appearance, the impact on the amenity of journey occupiers, parking and highways, energy and climate change. The principle of the development is acceptable as site is located in a designated local significant site. The redevelopment of site will result in a net increase in internal floor space, thereby supporting the intensification of existing employment site. The proposed development will also provide jobs for local residents to boost the economy and is supported by the council's regeneration aims. Design principles. In design terms, the design and layout of the buildings will be attractive and contemporary, finished in durable materials with glazed corners. The height of the building, as stated before, ranges from 11.6 meters to 13.5 meters in height, with first floor mezzanine floors. As shown on this CGI, the brick panels will be incorporated that would match the existing residential neighbors, with consideration to the proposal at Selby Centre redevelopment. The roof of the industrial building will be low pitched with metal clad with hipped features to reduce the mass and visual appearance of the building. A green roof will be incorporated to the office of Unit 3. This slide shows the master plan, which consists of short row of 3 residential buildings, as mentioned before. The slide also shows the access which will not be different from the existing. However, a number of pedestrian improvements are proposed, such as new sidewalk along the northern side, new zebra crossing opposite each unit, new black weld mesh fence along the northern boundary, new pedestrian and cycle gates. This slide also shows the layout of the buildings that will be stepped away from the boundary of Ellington Avenue, as minimizing the impact on these residential properties. In terms of landscaping, the existing site primarily consists of hard standing, and with the new proposal, it seeks to address the landscaping frontage that will combine large species of trees which are compatible with the street character. There are no trees to be felled. All trees along the northern boundary will be retained. The proposed development will include planting of 31 new trees. The proposed landscaping will increase the connectivity between the existing green spaces and inhabitants. The proposed landscaping will also enhance biodiversity and promote accessibility. The proposed landscaping will also provide new amenity space for future employees. As mentioned before, there are no trees to be felled. All trees along the northern boundary will be retained. On this slide also, I'm just showing some landscaping precedents that can be compared to. So on this slide, I'm just showing the proposed building. So it's the proposed building, as I said before, it's a row of a terrace of 3 units. Also on this slide, it shows the zebra crossing that is also proposed. On this slide as well, you can see the brickwork proposed to match the residential buildings. Also on this slide, you can see the glazed corners of the new building. Again, I'm showing another CGI of the proposed building. This CGI shows the rear of the buildings, and particularly it's going to have climbing planters that will improve the outlook of the building from the rear gardens of the residential properties on Ellington Avenue. This will also enhance biodiversity. This CGI also shows the corner of Unit 3, again with glazed corners and brick panels. Again, on this CGI, you can see the new pedestrian crossings that are proposed. Also on this CGI, you can see the loading bays in front of the units and some new trees. On this slide show, it shows the proposed materials such as the grey profile cladding, silver composite cladding, some green climbers on the rear of the buildings that you saw earlier, which will provide some screening. The brickwork to match, as said before, the existing residential properties, and the biodiverse green roof. All materials will be conditioned. On this slide, I'm just showing the proposed ground floor for Unit 1, 2, and 3. As you can see, this floor, the floor plan of Unit 1 and 2 and 3 are significantly stepped away along the boundary of the rear gardens of the residential properties on Ellington Avenue. This slide just shows the first floor, which comprises of offices, mezzanine level at Unit 3. On this slide is the proposed roof plan, which shows the location of PV panels and roof lights. The area highlighted in green shows the biodiverse green roof. On this slide, I'm just sharing the elevations of the proposed buildings. The south elevation, which shows the green climbers. Those in green are the green climbers. So this will soften the appearance of the building, backing onto the garden of the residential properties. Again, it's something I've already said. Also, on these elevations, you can see the brick panels that I've shared earlier. And as mentioned before, all the materials will be conditioned. So moving on to transport and parking. The site has a public transport accessibility level of 2 to 3, which indicates that the access is reasonably good. The site access will remain broadly the same as currently laid out. However, some amendments have been made to the proposed development, such as new pedestrian footway, vehicle gate is proposed to the northern boundary to improve site access. A pedestrian link and gate and new pedestrian crossing is also proposed, which is something I've mentioned earlier already. The proposed building will provide a total of 27 parking spaces, of which 3 are for disabled parking. There is 8 HGV loading bays that will be serviced by HGVs. And overall, also there's an increase in HGV movements from present, but a decrease on-site parking. A total of 8 20-cycle spaces will be provided and will be located over to the northernmost part of the site. There is 20 long stay and 8 short stay spaces. In terms of electric vehicles, there's 3 electrical charging points will be provided, positioned to serve 6 parking spaces. So moving on to section 278 improvement works. Given in the increase in vehicle movements, the section 278 mitigation is key to improving road safety and design by removing car parking, redesigning of roundabouts to allow for safe HGV movements, and improving access for local buses. The improvements are important and are supported by transport officers and highways department. The improvement works will be beneficial for local residents and are required to make the proposal acceptable in transport grounds. These will be secured via Section 106 agreement. In terms of impact on amenity, I just wanted to point out that we have not received any representation from the neighboring properties. So we haven't received any objection. In terms of daylight and sunlight, the applicant has submitted a daylight and sunlight report. The report states that notably Aylington Avenue, where the site backs onto the rear gardens of number 34 to 62, will be compliant with the BREE guidelines. Number 40 and 42 Aylington Avenue would experience losses marginally. In terms of privacy, overlooking and outlook, the submitted plans demonstrate that there will be no windows to the rear of the building. The proposal will not result in any overlooking impacts nor loss of privacy to the properties along Aylington Avenue. Furthermore, the footprint of the proposed building has been set back from the boundaries further than the existing building to enhance separation distances and mitigate impact on the residential properties. In regards to outlook, the proposal will include climbing planters to the rear of the building, as stated before. Also, there'll be new trees planted to screen the buildings. It is considered the inclusion of trees and green walls will increase visual interest, will improve the overall outlook of the residential properties. As such, it is considered the outlook of the properties will not be significantly impacted, rather will be visually pleasing. In terms of noise and disturbance from mechanical service plants, this will be controlled by a suitable worded planning condition. In terms of dust and noise relating to demolition and construction works, these will be temporary impacts that will be typically controlled by a non-planning legislation. A demolition and construction methodology for the development will be controlled by a condition. In terms of pollution and construction noise during construction and demolition phases, a condition will be attached. On this slide, I wanted to draw attention to the proposed buildings compared to the existing build lines. So the dotted line in gray represents or shows the existing building at the moment. And the purple dotted line shows the proposed buildings. Again, you can tell that Unit 1 and Unit 2 are set back, and also the scale, it just shows that it's a little bit, the purple line shows that it's a little bit bigger, but in terms of what's existing compared to what's proposed, it's not that significant. Again, on this slide, I just wanted to emphasize the separation distances in relation to residential properties on Ellington Avenue. In terms of energy and sustainability, the proposed development is proposing living roofs, air heat pumps, green roofs, and green walls. The development achieves a reduction of 122 carbon dioxide emission on site, which is supported in principle. The application will be subject to conditions and obligations. In terms of biodiversity net gain, the applicant has submitted a report which indicates that the calculations will be approximately 48.36%, which results in an increase in biodiversity net gain. The inclusion of green walls to the southern elevation of building planted with climbers and will mitigate the impact of external views from the residential areas and enhance biodiversity value of the site. Furthermore, the inclusion of green roof to the western roof of the building will aid ecological enhancement. Section 106 heads of terms. So we've got carbon mitigation, commercial travel plan, employment initiatives, construction, logistic and management plan, highway improvements, and monitoring contribution. Recommendation is for approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for that. So, committee have any questions, any clarification or questions, please? Councillor Worrell.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to ask, yeah, it does concern me slightly that none of the neighbouring residents made any representations, because I sort of suspect it's more that they didn't really realise rather than not being concerned about anything, or as possible anyway. I just wanted to ask regarding, so it mentions that a couple of the properties along that row will experience a loss of daylight, which is slightly above kind of the acceptable guidelines. So I just wondered if Officer could expand a bit more about that and sort of why it's deemed acceptable in the context of this planning application. And then on other sort of amenity, specifically with regard to noise, I just wondered if the sort of types of I guess, are there any restrictions on the type of employment activities that can take place in these new warehouse spaces? And has that been considered when calculating possible noise impact on the neighbouring residential properties? Because obviously there's quite a big difference between some industries and then like heavy machinery. Thanks.
Can I just pass on the daylight and sunlight to our design officer? Maybe you'll be able to go in depth with that. In terms of noise, the development is speculative. So at the moment, we don't know who the end users are going to be. But we have consulted the noise officer, and she's supportive of the application as long as a condition to manage the noise is attached to the application.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Yes, there won't be any impact on sunlight on any of the neighbouring residents because the proposals to the north. To the south, in respect to daylight, yeah, there's small losses of daylight to some of the rooms, either daylight distribution or vertical sky component. But so the BRE guide says that people don't notice a loss of daylight of 20% or less. And it then gets progressively more noticeable the more you lose. These the small impacts are just over 20%, so they're close to the boundary where you would not notice it at all. And I mean, currently they get reasonably good daylight levels. They would continue to get reasonably good, but only slightly less than before. And it'd be considerably better daylight levels than we routinely see in more densely built up areas of the borough, close to larger scale developments. That's appropriate for this relatively suburban area of the borough, and I think that the small losses are really minor and unlikely to be of a major concern to people.
Thank you. So I assume that we have consulted with neighbours, with neighbouring properties that are in the usual way. So, but we didn't receive any representations from anyone. But we did do a
Yes, we did a consultation, and also we put up site notices. So there were site notices on the street. So anybody walking in the street would have seen that there's an application.
I've got Councillor Ibrahim, then I'll bring you in, Councillor Rice.
Just looking for the page, but so all right, I'll go to the first question. So on the transport bit, you said and the words you used were that the accessibility was 2 to 3, which was very good. But although in the document it actually uses the word moderate, it doesn't use the word very good. Because I mean, it says here the 318. I think the 318 is a pretty infrequent bus. It's quite, I think you get about 3 an hour either way. But I'm just double checking that I know exactly where it is, because I would have thought it's near the W3 bus stop as well, which isn't mentioned there. So do I have am I not fully understanding where it is?
I'm just going to let transportation officer come in on that.
Hello, my name's Joshua Don. I'm a senior transport planner. So in terms of when you look at PTAL levels, they're based upon frequencies and walkabilities to like bus stops or train stations. But the site itself, it's located on the 384 Hell and Rise section that goes up to the hospital.
Yeah.
It's not near any, if you're talking about the bus stops to W3, those are located on White Hart Lane itself,
Yeah.
rather this one is on Queen Street. In terms of access to the stations, it is only a 10-minute walk from White Hart Lane station itself, so it is quite a reasonably good walking route. Not a long distance, but it's good access in terms of foot travel.
Okay, because the 318 is a very infrequent bus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. So I don't, based on where the route itself comes from, because it comes from White Lane, not from the station side, and for anyone travelling to the site will more than likely use the station. I wouldn't see that bus route as a main access to it by
Okay.
public transport.
Okay, so it's not really accessible by bus then?
It would be anything along, so if you were travelling on White Hart Lane itself, it's only a short walking distance. I would say any bus stops on White Lane that's served by the W3, it's probably a 3-minute walk, if that.
Yeah, and also my question was going to be, I was looking at the comments of the police in terms of secure by design, and it looks like that's not really been agreed yet. I mean, that wasn't really kind of, they didn't, how should I describe? They've made recommendations about what we should be putting in as a condition to make it secure by design. Because from the wording that I saw, I was looking for the page, sorry, I did lose it, where it says that they weren't consulted by the architects on it. 109, sorry, it's because I'm going forward.
A condition has been attached, condition 17.
Okay. Where's that?
So 17 and 9 and 18, page 43
Thank you.
and 42.
Thank you.
Okay, can you switch off your mic, please? Councillor Rice?
Thank you. Looking at these papers, there appear to be very little reference, if any at all, to what I would call substantial employment. There's some consideration of warehouse work, and I would suggest that's probably driving forklifts and that sort of thing, and shunting heavy materials around. But in my view, that's not substantial work. I mean, Tottenham has always been a place with light industrial work. In the last few years, with all the building house development that's going on, the light industrial work has disappeared off the map, and it doesn't appear to be much progress being made in recruiting in industrial work, at least the very light industrial work. I mean, you talk about jobs lost and jobs. How many jobs have been gained as opposed to how many jobs being lost in this development?
What is the question?
Potentially. Yeah, how many jobs potentially?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Rice, under on page 33, 6.11, employment and training, paragraph 6.11.2, it shows the size of the employment floor space, and also that the redevelopment of the site would potentially increase the jobs from 57 to 242 full-time equivalent jobs. So a significant net gain.
I didn't ask about speculative jobs. I want actual jobs being created by this development.
Is this a question? Can the applicant, can you give us a bit more of a?
Councillor, it's a speculative development. So at the moment, we really don't know the specific how many. So just to point that out.
Just bring you in. Can you just maybe expand on that, please?
Thank you. Yes, I'm Carol Malkin. I'm a partner at Montague Evans Planning Consultants. So it is a speculative application, but and there will be a huge increase in the number of jobs from existing to proposed. I think just to answer the point you made earlier, Councillor Rice, about the type of jobs in industrial warehouses, I think there were perhaps historically kind of warehouse jobs and just stacking shelves and stacking kind of racking, but things have moved on over the last kind of 5-10 years, and there is a lot of varied jobs within warehouses. So each unit will have ancillary office floor space. It will have, I think, 12.5%, 13% of the unit itself will have office content. So it'll be quite a lot of office jobs in there as well. But even kind of those warehouse jobs, they are high skilled jobs. They all have kind of specific training for, for whether it's to do with, to do with kind of forklift driving or to do with kind of using kind of there's quite a lot of robotics and kind of these warehousing as well, kind of a lot of IT stuff. So there is a wide range of jobs that goes into these warehouses across different sectors in different levels, which will have kind of a pretty direct benefit locally. Certainly over existing as well, which is a more traditional warehousing job.
Thank you. I think someone's just going to talk about local employment. Can I? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So just to expand on the jobs from this, there will be various monies going towards local employment initiatives. So there's financial contributions and participation required for local training and employment. There'll be apprenticeship support fees. There'll be no less than 20% of the workforce employed during the construction phase of the relevant units, comprising of residents whom shall be employed for a minimum of 26 weeks. So they will be local employees, Haringey residents. There's further provision for support fees for £1,500 for apprenticeships towards recruitment costs. There would be an overall 5% of the construction costs put towards training Haringey residents. There would be a submission of an employment and skills plan. And there'll be one full-time apprenticeship per £3 million of development costs of the total construction workforce. And there's provision of financial contributions of £56,417, which would be used by the council to provide and procure support for local people to be employed if they don't have the skill set. So that is just, Councillor, in the construction phase of the scheme. As we've all mentioned, the proposal is speculative, but there has been a number of these type of applications coming before the committee this year. It is very common and it's very it's one quite lucrative at the moment, and it is something where we have seen a lot of this and a lot of interest in this type of employment. So the fact that we have a good combination of office accommodation as well as the sort of larger warehouse accommodation means that we would be quite confident that we will get a much larger workforce than we currently would have with the Booker's wholesale. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Donovan and Councillor Brendan.
Okay, thank you. I've got two questions. Both of them relate to safety. One of them follows on from Councillor Ibram's point in relation to the crime prevention, and it is quite significant. I think it talks on pages 108 and 109 regarding the safety, because of the area that it's in, the safety of lone women and girls and vulnerable young people. It says there the conditions are 17 and 29. I think it's been corrected just now that it's actually 17 and 18. On page 109 or 108, it just mentions 17 and 29. If you look on the conditions on page 8 and 9, it's a couple of words for each, and it does say full details will be in Appendix 1. I can't actually find Appendix 1 and some further details about the conditions. The second thing is in relation to transport, and this is the goods that will be accessing this this warehouse. Obviously, they'll although, as said before, we don't know exactly yet what sort of company will be there, but it does say in the report that it's likely to be 16.5 meter long HGVs, and the applicant has not examined any alternative methods outside of these very large vehicles. Also, there's no exact routing has been provided. It says that the well, in the report, it says it will, the vehicles will get to the High Road and the A10. I assume they will also go to the North Circular A406. Again, there's a condition number 7, but we haven't got very much detail in relation to condition 7. I think that condition is that there will have to be a submission of a service and delivery plan, which obviously we won't see, but it will be seen at a later stage. It's really, can we have some indication of where these 16.5 metre long HGVs are going to go, either coming into the site or leaving the site? And when we on the site visit the other day, there's some quite small residential roads around there. It's not an easy place to get into or get out of. And my last point is, it also says in the report that both roundabouts are unsuitable for HGVs, both local roundabouts. And I understand there's a section 278 obligation to improve those roundabouts. And the question is for the planning officers, do you think they can be improved to such an extent that those roundabouts are then safe for these large HGV vehicles? I think the Booker at the moment, I think they work in a slightly different way with smaller vehicles. It sounds as though there's going to be some very large vehicles service in this new development. So both questions are about safety. Thank you.
I'll get the transportation officer to respond to that.
Yeah, I'll start off by asking the question on routing. So at the moment, since the bus gate was put in on Enfields, vehicles from the site are forced southward on the network. They can't go north further to the A406. So it is an existing current issue where larger vehicles are deliveries are used in the current residential streets. Now, from trip generation done by the applicant within the transport assessment, it used a very intensive, it looked at an intensified use by B8, which was probably the most intense use, and that only showed an additional 8 HGV units in the peaks. So it's very small increase in what's existing now. That's only an 8 increase on what's currently existing on the site. Now, in terms of the sort of overall use of of the road network itself, there is no weight restrictions on the roads, so they are currently being used. Now, I know in terms of the report, we did look at with colleagues in highways the current suitability of the roundabouts, and through tracking and modelling, we found they weren't currently suitable for movement, especially larger vehicles. That's why through the mitigation that we've sort of looked at and we've gone out with them, both the roundabouts will need to be redesigned and looked, but that is part of a wider section 278 scheme. It is key to.
Okay. Yeah, Maurice is going to come in. I didn't quite understand, Councillor O'Donovan, your first point about the safety of women and girls. I couldn't understand. I didn't quite follow what you were saying. Can you just clarify that, please? It's a switch on your microphone, please.
Sorry, it's a comment on page 108 and 109 by Design of Crime, I think it's called, and they were talking about their concerns in relation to vulnerability of, as I said, lone women and young people, particularly where it is in relation to Selby.
Okay.
Just leave that for a minute, Maurice.
Yeah,
do you
sure.
want to come?
If I can come in on the HGV issue. So Josh is correct. So once the bus gate was implemented on Bull Lane / Queen Street, all traffic accessing Bookers and our own kind of warehouse to the south of Bookers is accessed by White Hart Lane, Crichton Avenue. Okay, so that's an existing situation. So those roads are already taking 16 meters HGV traffic. What we're saying here is because we are increasing the intensification of the site and we're adding additional traffic in terms of HGV movements, that maneuver where a lorry will probably do 2 or 3 trips to go around the roundabout to get into the site, they can do it, they're doing it, it's slowing down the network. So what we're saying, because we're adding to that, we want to improve those roundabouts so we're not delaying the buses. So it's correct in that there is no restriction on the road. So any vehicle can currently use those roads. But what we want to do is to improve the situation to make sure the traffic flows better along Crichton Avenue and White Hart Lane. So there's less delays to the buses, which is the W3 and the 318. But as Josh has said, we've taken it further than that to bring it to our highways engineer, which we don't normally do at this stage, for them to do a design, preliminary design, and track it to make sure that in the future situation, when we get the money and we improve it, it works even better. So there's no delays. So that's already gone above the stage we normally take it. At this stage, that is gone to our engineers. And our engineers, who are far more competent than me to design roads, have taken the decision that it's possible.
Did you want to follow up, Councillor O'Donovan? You don't have to, but
Yeah, I mean, it's just a point. I wouldn't want to wish HGVs on the residents of Bull Lane. I can understand why Enfield Council made that decision, but equally, we wouldn't want to wish an increased number of HGV onto our residents either. But I understand I understand your explanation.
I mean, I can follow up. I mean, it's outside the scope of this plan application. I think the Bull Lane filter was put in to facilitate another scheme, which is CS1. The issue there is that by putting that filter in, we've probably reduced the traffic on Queen Street, Bull Lane by probably 95%. It was a rat running from the A406 through to White Hart Lane and on into the rest of the borough. So in fact, the bus gate is probably, well, it's the largest scheme. We could discuss it. The bus gate in itself has actually reduced HGV movement, but we're saying it once you've touched it and you're intensifying it now, we want it to be better because we want to make sure we protect public transport.
thank you. Kevin, can I bring you in, Kevin Tohel, about the women and girls, the safety?
Thank you, Chair. So, Councillor, just to read through the comments from Secure by Design officers, what they've said is that the architects haven't met with them to date. This is not uncommon, unless it's a sort of large scale, usually mixed use comprehensive redevelopment. You would not typically get crime prevention officers working with architects at that earlier stage, which is the reason why we've put on conditions 17 and 18 as they've asked for, to ensure that is comprehensively covered once we know who the end user of the site is. And those would have to take place. Those discussions would take place with the crime prevention officers prior to any of those conditions being discharged. Effectively, it's actually the police who ultimately would say we can improve those conditions.
So just to add to that, Kevin is exactly right. What the Secure by Design team are saying is they're recommending putting on the conditions, and the conditions have been put on, and they say that the conditions can address the concerns that they've raised, and that is a common occurrence. So so we have taken their recommendation exactly, which addresses their concerns. The appendix is in there. So the appendix 1 is on page 35 plus, and that has all the conditions details as we would normally do in the pack. So yeah, page 35 onwards has all the conditions. So all the ones you've asked about are actually there in detail. It's not just the list at the beginning of the report. It's a full appendix of all the detailed conditions.
Right, okay, thank you. So I've got Councillor Brennan, Councillor Bevan, and did you want to come in again, Councillor Ibrahim? Not now. I'm just trying to. You do. Okay. Well, think about.
Yeah. So yes, you're right. This is what's confused me, Rob, because the conditions are on page 35, but that's all the conditions, like including, and obviously 17 and 18. However, in the actual wording of the police officer, they've said that they've put specific here it is. We have highlighted some of the main comments we have in relation to crime prevention, appendices 1. Okay, so where is their appendix 1? Because what you're saying about page 35 onwards, that's just the conditions that you've set, which includes meeting with the crime prevention officer. But they specifically said in there that they've given that their comments on what should be included in there in an appendix, but there is no appendix.
Need a moment to.
Sorry, just to be clear, DMM4, DMM5, that's presumably a Haringey Council document, which they've included as an appendix. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the next sentence, which says appendix 1, which is presumably, I read it as something that they've supplied, but is not included in the documents. Yeah, designed by crime. Yeah.
Chair, with your permission, the applicant would like to come in on that point.
Thank
Just
you.
to help Sarah out, yeah, there is an appendix. That
Where is it?
It's not in a pack, I don't think, but it's
Right.
on the application file. So
Okay.
there are some comments there from the Met Police, but in effect they are. When we go in to discharge those conditions, we will have those discussions with the Met Police, and they will ask us to do the things that they've asked us to do in that response. So we will be complying with what they've asked for.
I mean, I would quite like to have seen their comments.
They're fairly, yeah, I mean, it talks about requirement for CCTV and yeah.
Okay, the comments are summarised in a table. We're just looking for it.
Okay.
So if you can just bear with us, please.
Thanks, Chair. So the probably be easier if we could put this on the screen. The comments effectively just run through just a list of technical requirements that they're looking for. So the first one's boundary treatment. It talks about gating, the height of gates and so on. It says about recesses, the depths of recesses, anti-climb walls to be used, fencing types that it's recommended that it's to a certain UK standard, about lower boundary wall heights. The next box goes on to say about access control. And so on. It's just a series of technical specifications that the police would like to see. And it's,
Thank you. That's useful to know, but it just maybe in future, don't assume that we don't want to see those technical documents, because obviously we're both quite interested in that element of planning. So yeah, just for future, please include that.
Okay, thank you. Can you switch off your microphone, please? Councillor Brennan?
I'm actually interested in the transport again. So you've got your large vehicles coming in. So I just wondered how many, because I know that that's now the only route in, but when I went to the visit, it was quite a narrow residential road with two small roundabouts, and I'm quite surprised that any HGVs can even negotiate it as it is. So how many sort of use it now? And I didn't quite hear what the increase of HGV use is going to be, because the road is it's got small houses on either side and a narrow road. So I was just wondering how it was going to work. It doesn't look like it would even fit a lot of HGVs.
Okay, can you come back on that? But you have addressed some of it in previous answers, so.
Yeah, sure, Chair. I can bring up the transport assessment and Josh can get you the exact numbers. So there were, before surveys done, ATCs, and from memory, because look at it earlier, I think it was 300 something movements per day. Of those, Josh can tell me what was HGVs. I think what we're looking at here is there's a range of vehicles. So let's focus. So there's large ridges, there's light goods vehicle, and then the HGVs. The ones that we are concerned about is the additional 18 HGVs. And that's what we want the mitigation for. So in terms of the road, the standard running lane width is 3.5 meters. So you may say, okay, it's too narrow, but there's loads of roads within the borough that are taking HGVs, providing you have 3.5 running width. What normally happens is that you can't facilitate two-way movement of that traffic, but it's no different from if you look further down White Hart Lane and other bits and pieces near the college where HGVs are currently using. It's just that at that point when the HGVs are going down, other vehicles will need to give way, and that's always been the situation. I mean, it's better now because there's less traffic because of the bus gates, but it's always been the case because of the industrial nature of that street. That's always taken HGV movements because you have that 3.5 meters running lane in the middle, and other traffic will have to give way while the HGV comes around the corner or goes along.
So it's the little bit with houses that doesn't look like it's got any business on it, which is part of White Hart Lane. That's the bit that I was concerned.
The houses are irrelevant to the discussion. I think what's important is the running lane. So what do you need in terms of manual for street is roughly about 3.5 meters, unless you're doing turning movements, then you have to sweep to go around the corner. So what we're talking about is what is the residual carriageway width available for the HGVs to access that site, which is that in the middle between the parked cars on both sides. So what we'll seek to do as part of the Section 278 agreement is to rationalize the parking to make that easier, to make sure we have less congestion in the network, but it's essentially existing situation. So there is not an issue in terms of can HGV access, because they're already doing that. Is what we're seeking to do is enhance it to make sure it's easier for them to access and there's less delays on the network.
I'm less interested in the flow of traffic, which I obviously understand was your concern, and more interested in the residents having HGVs thundering past. But it doesn't sound like there's a huge increase. So maybe
it's not a huge increase, and as Josh said earlier, it is public highway, and there are no weight restrictions. So normally, if you don't want HGVs or large vehicles, you apply a weight restriction to the road. There is currently no weight restriction on this road, which means any vehicle class can use the road. You're right in that, well, there's residential properties here, but I'll say they probably have it better than other residential properties in the borough because they have a bus gate and a filter, which means they have less traffic apart from the industrial traffic. So it's outside the scope here. So if you should ask residents in Stapleton Road or Stroud Green and other bits about HGV movements, they'll say, well, we have that traffic and we haven't got a bus gate. Can we have a bus gate? So all we're talking about here is essentially the service in those two industrial roads rather than true traffic. So there's no true traffic.
Thank you. I see you've come up to the table. Did you want to come in? Okay, all right, thank you. I'll bring you in if there is. Councillor Bevan, thank you for your patience. Thank you.
Well, we're getting a lot of these developments because they're quite profitable. And so far we've been able to make sure the design is really good and it's not just a cheap industrial type unit like the ones we've got in Brantwood Road, which are really a good design. But I noticed, so I'm pleased to note that there's some brickwork in this development. It's not all going to be the panel type things, but I'm a bit concerned it never went to the QRP. And I think in future, we want these industrial sites to look good, that we should make sure they go to a QRP. That's just a comment. And then I thought green walls had gone out of fashion because my understanding was that they were a fire hazard or they could become a fire hazard. So you never hear about green walls anywhere else now. So I am a little bit surprised that it's got about the green roof here. And then I will just say a little bit about the HGVs. I am a little bit concerned because there is a sixth form college nearby within a few minutes that has 1,200 students. And I'm quite sure a lot of them use this location going backwards and forwards. And the bus, and this is a really congested site when Spurs have events on. This site is a complete nightmare. The local councillors already are requesting that that bus gate be removed when Spurs Stadium is operating. I think we should ask it to be removed permanently because they would welcome that as well. It's a complete nightmare and it's a complete nonsense, basically. So whether we can put a condition in that that bus gate be removed, and then I'm also concerned the roundabouts are really small. So you seem to be convinced that you can get them big enough, you know, to take these lorries. So the section 278, is there a financial limit on it? Can we only spend up to a certain amount, or can we spend a fortune to get it right and the developers will have to pay it? Or because it's going to cost a lot of money. Those roundabouts are really small and the whole roads are small. So can we give a bill for £1 million, or what's the options?
If I could come in, Chair, on that one. The Section 278 works legally, and I've got Robert Walker here, who works with us previously, is essentially the works required to mitigate the impact of the scheme, and it's what they cost, and a reasonable cost certified by a borough engineer. I think we're thinking about this as a completely new town or new city. These are existing roundabouts already taking traffic. What we're doing is improving them to make sure it's easier for them to take that traffic. So I think it won't cost in the region you're talking about, but we can share the costs and we can share the designs with you when they're done. But I think it's not in the regions that you're talking about, but we can get.
I think it'd be good to share the designs with the 3 local councillors because they've got really big issues about this. And should there be some hourage restriction that this place doesn't operate when Spurs have got all their 20,000, 30,000 people walking around the area with cars and God knows what.
Okay, can you come through the chair, please, if you are, rather than having conversations between yourselves. Maurice, could you switch off your microphone for the time being? I want to come to Richard, first of all, about the design issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on the QRP, yes, we have started taking industrial schemes to QRPs recently, and you will remember a couple of months ago the West Road industrial scheme that you granted permission for, that went to the QRP. It was quite a rapid application. They came in pre-app early this year, went to the QRP, and then came in with an application. This scheme has taken a bit longer. It came in as a pre-app a couple of years ago when we weren't taking industrial schemes routinely to the QRP. So it's taken a bit longer to go from a pre-app to an application, which is why it didn't go to the QRP. I can also tell you about the green wall, Chair. It's not a intensive green wall, which is the sort of green wall that often has been a fire risk when it doesn't get watered or it needs intensive irrigation if it's not to be a fire risk, like at the Segro site, for instance. This is not that sort of green wall, though. It's just a series of wires and frames attached to the building, which will allow climbing plants to grow from the ground up those wires and frames. So there shouldn't be any fire risk, or very much, if any, fire risk from that. And it's not within the wall of the building. It's, you know, against, but away from the wall of the building that this frame and these wires will be, I believe.
Okay, right. Thank you. So, I mean, were they comments about the traffic jams at Spurs, Councillor Bevan, or do you want?
Well, the local councillors and councillors for that area, which I'm one, we meet Spurs on a regular basis. This issue of this bus gate and the traffic jams around this area come up at virtually every meeting, and they can't seem to get anywhere with Transport for London or the road people. it's a really big issue, this bus gate. Well, Morris will know about that because he's at the meeting.
Right, Morris, I'll bring you in for that.
With your permission, Chair. So I am also the lamp lead for Spurs, and I'm aware of the issues. And the issues, councillors, if you're moving 62,000 people in a local area, there will be traffic. There's no such thing as moving that number of people without traffic. And I think naturally it enforces how people travel and the habits of people. And that's what we try and do as part of our communication strategy with local residents. Councillor Bevan will be aware of it. Any new business coming in, we'll know it's not a time for you to bring in deliveries because it's naturally enforcing. In terms of the bus gate in Enfield, it is outside our control. It's not required to deliver this planning application, and that is why we are securing the section 278 to improve the access route to the south. There is independent discussions taking place with Enfield regarding easing the restriction on that filter on an event day and possibly to look at HGV movements through that filter. But again, I restate this, it is not necessary for this development proposal because we are seeking and the applicant has agreed to a comprehensive section 27 mitigation measure for highways works. If we do get to a point with Enfield where we have agreed to have HGVs to go through that filter or for it to be eased on the Spurs event day, it will only improve the situation on top of what we are negotiating as part of this plan application, but it is not required for this plan application.
Okay, thank you. So I think that's covered all of your questions and points. So Councillor Ibrahim, did you want to come in? Then I do want to.
Yeah, no, my question was going to be about the Spurs traffic and it's been covered.
Right, okay, all right. So are there any more? No, okay. So I'd like to bring Kevin Tohill in to confirm the proposal with a summary of any changes, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the recommendation is to grant permission subject to the conditions and informatives, together with the completion of a Section 106 agreement with the obligations set out in the heads of terms in the committee report. As published, there were no additional conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So the recommendation is to grant. So all those in favour, please show. Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Moving on, we have item 10, which is update on major proposals. So does anyone want an update on any major proposals? Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, just yeah. It's a reminder really, but 259 the Strategic Messer Estate. I raised the issue in the past because I was approached by residents that they were really surprised that we were building these two tower blocks on one of the most fume congested transport junctions in Haringey. I'm just raising that point again to put it in the officers' minds again, because I think it's quite a valid point. And it seems these discussions, I think, have been going on for some time, so I'm not quite sure whether that's part of the discussions. That's just an observation.
All right.
Thank you, Chair. Noted, Councillor. I mean, this site was identified as one of the housing delivery sites a number of years ago, and the council's housing delivery team have just been working through the proposal. But of course, things like impacts of pollution, air quality, and so on have to be taken into consideration in the design. And once that proposal would be ready, it would be submitted to planning and have to have the same scrutiny as every other application and come before you yourselves. Thank you, Chair.
And obviously that issue is much high profile now than it was when they probably started thinking about this site. But anyway, that's about. And then the other one, the Lockkeeper's Cottage on 201. I mean, I know where that cottage is. I don't know whether it's correct to say this at this time, because I don't want to prejudice myself when this comes to the committee. But that's a really nice prominent corner site at the side of the canal. And you're talking here about huge blocks. Well, it says 25 stories tall. I mean, I'm just putting it as a concern because I don't want to prejudice myself, but it does seem to be, well, it's just
All right, well, I don't think you should say any more about that. Let's just sort of note that your comments that you've said. Thank you for that, Councillor Bevan. We're on to item 11. Sorry, Councillor Britt.
Sorry, yeah, I do always ask about this, but it just seems it's taken quite a long time. Omega Works A and B, what's happening with that?
Not a great deal, councillor, at the moment. We're still in discussions on Omega Works. It's sort of we had the last discussion probably a month or so ago, but it's still there, and we're still having those discussions. So it'll stay on that list, and then we'll let you know if it comes forward.
Okay, thank you. Item 11, which is applications determined under delegated powers. Any comments on those? No? Okay. So we have no new items of urgent business. And so the date of the next meeting is the 9th of November. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you and good night. December, did I say November? We're just going to show our, or did I say September? I can't remember now. I'm going crackers. Let me say, please note the date of the next meeting as the 9th of December. Thank you.
Christmas party.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Cooley.